welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Catherine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Washington Free Beacon. We are your morning show for any hour. There's tons of news as usual. The primary proceeds apace. You guys will know the future because it is New Hampshire primary day as we are recording, but we'll do a little state of the race to get into that, and some news, some sad news about the Navy SEALs and about sort of international conflict that will continue to be boiling, and a little DeSantis postmortem.
That's right.
But before we get to that, Vic, how is it going?
Hello, Mary Catherine. Going fine. I'd like to start off the show, though, with a PSA, a public service announcement.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for clarifying what a PSA is.
You're welcome. In case for some of the people who don't know the lingo.
If you could do that ASAP, which means as soon as possible.
As possible. I got, my colleague here, Adam Credo, by the way, he does one FYSA.
I don't know what that
for
was.
your situational awareness.
Oh, FYSA. Okay.
This. Okay. So, there's a streaming show, a network, Fox Nation. So it's different from Fox.
Yes.
Fox Nation. And they have special programs on there. And it's streaming, and it's I believe you have to pay. And I think that's a premium. That's premium. Yeah. Okay. They had an ad for a show on Fox Nation, and it's called Poison Ivy. And I just want to let everyone know it did not star Drew Barrymore from 1992. Mary Catherine, I'm so glad by the look on your face you got the joke. I said, suppose I tell it.
Boy, do I get that joke.
I was so looking forward to Poison Ivy. It wasn't even Poison Ivy 2 with Alyssa Milano. Nor was it Poison Ivy 3, The New Seduction with Jamie Presley.
Oh, Jamie Presley did one.
Yeah, she did. She did. This was a different Poison Ivy. Apparently, things in school are bad.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, so if you're into that, meaning knowing about how bad these things are in our schools in the Ivy League, tune into Poison Ivy.
I see what they did there.
Yes, they should do one on the economy, and they can call it Risky Business. They could do one with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She goes to Dallas, and then Debbie does Dallas. They could do that on Fox Nation.
Oh my gosh,
just tune into that. I got more for that came from. Okay, that's all I had for you. They're
going to do one called Top Gun, and Katie Pavlich will host.
Hey,
look at that.
There you go.
She actually does have one on Fox Nation that's like Luxury Hunting Lodges of America. And it is
she doesn't. Oh,
amazing.
Come on. Really?
Oh, yeah. No, she goes on a trip to these amazing places and does the things she loves most in the world.
And that's the job.
And that's the gig. And it's fantastic. It's fantastic.
I will say this. No matter where you are and what you do, it does require, in our business, as you know, work.
Yes.
It does work. So I do want to say, I've probably been on 5, maybe 6 weekly standard cruises. Rest in peace.
And we worked hard.
You know this. As soon as you walk out of your cabin, you're on.
You're on.
And most people are interesting, but you have to genuinely be. People pay good money. And I always say they pay good money, not just to listen to you, but for you to listen to them. This is their time. They subscribe to you.
Yep.
Here's what they think.
You have your platform. Now I'm paying for mine.
And this is it. And every night, it's different guests. Every night, different table. And it's, how are you? What are you doing? What do you think about this? And you sort of run the table. So Kate and I would split up, right. Because it's a large table. You sit on one end, I sit on the other, and then we'll divide and conquer and make sure everybody gets their money's worth.
Also, if you really do listen on those gatherings, because it's older folks, it's often business people, you will hear some amazing stories. You'll be talking about politics, and then you'll be like, well, tell me about your life. And this person will have built some multi-gajillion-dollar business coming from nothing, has 4 kids that are all raised and also running the business. You're like, oh, I write little political columns, but good job you for
one of the
hanging with us.
One of the favorite guests I met was a fellow named Pat Halloran, and he was a small, old, wiry guy. And it turned out he was a pilot for the U-2 reconnaissance plane.
See?
And later on was a test pilot for the SR-71.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
Amazing.
You find amazing people. So, all right.
How are you?
If you listen to them, right?
Yes. And so I imagine the cabin thing it's hard work.
It sounds fantastic.
Hard, a lot of travel.
Fantastic work is what that is. I remember Poison Ivy because I remember the
Yes, please, let's go back to the important subject.
I remember the movie poster hanging in the local video store.
Yes. Oh, it's good for video.
Iconic. iconic. The red skirt suit. I just pulled it up to remind myself.
Yeah.
Drew Barrymore in her 20s prime.
Yes. What do you think was this is her sort of post rehab, but before,
yes, she was still a bad
before
girl.
Never Been Kissed and The Wedding Singer.
Yes.
So she was there. What do you think that was, in terms of rental, the breakdown between men and women renting that movie?
It was probably a lot of dudes. And I do remember, perhaps because of the dudes running the video store, that poster stayed up for
Forever.
a long time,
Yes,
which is why I remember it so vividly. Okay.
Very nice.
I don't think I've ever seen the actual movie.
Poison Ivy 2 is pretty good. I have no idea.
I think I'm going to watch all three.
Yeah, I don't remember what was said.
Get ready, Steve, for our marathon.
Okay. There you go.
I have a little story from my week. Remember I said I was going to be fun mom?
Yeah.
I was going to go.
Oh, right.
I was going to do some sledding.
It's still snow out there.
There's snow. It's pretty icy right now, so
cold.
watch out there. But on the Saturday, it was pretty nice.
Mm-hmm.
Still powdery snow.
Yeah,
And a friend of mine down the street said, we got a good hill by our house. So I took the kids over there. We have some inflatable sleds, not traditional ones, but somewhere along the line, we got inflatable sleds. Her kids had big tube sleds, just snow tubes. That,
Not the discs.
No, just a big fluffy tube. So that, I like the tube because that offers a little cushion if you are to, if you're bumping, if you are to crash into something, perhaps it will hit the tube before it hits you. So that's nice. Okay. So I take my kids there. We all walk over to the hill. The hill is great. It is modest but fun, with a little dip in it that kind of slows down your roll before you get to the end where you might hit a fence or a house.
Right.
Little kids, totally fine, not anywhere near fences and houses. However, you may know that I, as a grown woman, weigh 3 times as much as my children. So I don't know if you guys understand physics, but that's going to carry me.
Speed.
That's going to carry me faster down that hill. And I knew that, Vic. And as a result, I was like, let's play it really safe. So I went down the middle of the hill, but I was obviously going to tube because I like to do things like that.
Right.
I'm also in a preservation period of my life. Okay. These tendons need to be preserved.
Sure.
Like everything's got to be preserved. If I go down,
we're not the youngins that I
can't come back from it the way that I used to. So
right.
I go conservative on a tube, middle of the hill, not the smoothed out sort of groove area. I go towards the middle of it where it's like sort of chunky snow. Yeah. I'm like, this will slow me down. Goes great. Tons of fun. Wow. Love this. I'm young again. Okay. I do a couple runs. Mostly the kids are doing it. I'm excited that both of them are going for it. Neither one of them's hesitant at all. So that's nice to see.
They get a kick out of watching mommy go down the...
Oh, yeah. So, yeah. A small kick. Not a huge one. Medium kick. So I go down the middle of the hill. All good. I did like 2 runs that way. And as we're leaving, the other mom and I said, the moms are doing one more run. You should never say stuff like that because you're pushing your luck, right?
Yeah.
It's like I should have just quit while I was ahead. We go down the hill and somehow I veer. Now, the problem with the tube is you can't steer that thing.
Right.
Okay. So I end up going somehow sideways onto the more slick track.
Oh, no.
And of course, because of my weight, I hit that like dip area faster than a child would and then sort of hop up over the edge.
You were slightly airborne.
Which then sends me into the fence area. It's a wooden fence. And worst case scenario, it spins me backwards. So like I can't tell what I'm doing or where I'm going. And I hit the fence and my head goes doink against the fence and my winter hat goes in the air and onto the ground. And I go onto the ground outside my tube.
Did you tumble? Was there a bit of a...
No, just landed. And there was a moment where I said, Mary Catherine, did you just do the thing where you're too old for this shit?
Yeah.
And then you end up concussed and you have to like walk home with your children. But I assessed the situation. It was a very light doink on my head.
Is there that brief moment, like a couple seconds, don't move, wait?
Oh, no, you got to check everything.
You got to check everything,
yeah,
right?
This is not, again, we're not children. You can't just stand up from this stuff. You got to check it out.
No way.
You got to put yourself,
terrifying.
On a momentary back brace. Like just mentally, you need to think about that before you get up. But it turns out minor doinking of my head against the fence. I put my hat back on. Of course, I played it off a little bit because my kids are there. I'm like, I'm totally fine.
Did the kids see you? And if so, did any of them laugh?
Not only did the kids see me, one of them videotaped it. And honestly, looking at the video, I was like, oh, that looks scarier than what I felt.
I think you know what? I'd love to see that video.
I'll see what I can arrange. Anyway, it's no poison ivy. I'll tell you that.
Glad you didn't land in any.
Anyway, I came out okay.
Glad you are in one piece.
Yeah, I came out okay. I did. It's just one of those things. Your risk analysis has to change as you get older.
Yeah. No. When I was young, visiting, up in the Catskills, as I've mentioned, we went down toboggan.
Mm-hmm.
That's wood.
Yeah.
And when you tumble on that, everybody's in it. You could try to pack in about 3 guys.
See, I'm
really kind of comfortably.
I'm a bad combo because I like stuff like sledding. I like to take some risks. I am old and I am Southern. So I don't know how to do these things. If you give me a slip and slide, my risk analysis is pretty decent because I've done that a lot.
But snow, it's kind of a rarity because this is different not your
for me.
thing.
Yeah. Anyway,
well, thank goodness.
Your intrepid podcast host is A-okay.
She is.
So anyway, speaking of intrepid, shall we get into this now Womano primary race?
Yes.
You like that?
Yeah.
Womano.
That's a new one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So from the beginning of this primary race, the hope of some, the calculation of some, perhaps the hype was that this could come down to a 2-person race. And then Trump would really have to face a challenge. Well, it has already become a 2-person race before New Hampshire. As we speak today, by the time you hear this, New Hampshire will be done.
Yeah.
But a 2-person race before New Hampshire, which I don't think any of us actually anticipated.
No, certainly considering the person who recently dropped out.
And that's the second part.
That.
We certainly didn't anticipate a Nikki Haley Donald Trump race by the time we hit New Hampshire. Ron DeSantis dropped out shortly after Iowa. They did a little bit of perfunctory, we're going to stick around till March for a couple of days. Mm-hmm. But it was clear, without any foothold in New Hampshire, even though he had done some events there, he wasn't totally absent. But without a real foothold in New Hampshire, and with South Carolina, frankly, looking a lot like Iowa, that if you leave those 3 states with not a delegate to your name, there's no path. Yeah. And I think that's what they saw coming.
And he stood his ground. Remember, in Iowa, having visited all 99 counties, and this is it, make or break. And the best you can do is 21%. Yeah. That's not going to cut it. And the other thing that we've been talking about on this show many times is the amount of money that DeSantis and his super PAC, Never Back Down, I think it's Never Back Down.
Yes, correct.
Has spent, which is combined between the two of them, something like $150 million.
Yes.
So I wanted to ask you, did you see that photo that was leaked of Scott Wagner, who is the head of Never Back Down, and it's the campaign war room, if you will. And there's only a few days left before, I guess this was before Iowa.
Right.
And everyone's on the laptops, work furiously because it's Iowa. This is where he said, this is it, you know, and visiting all the counties. And Scott Wagner is bent over a table working on a jigsaw puzzle. And you can see it's 1,000 pieces. So it is a challenge.
Perhaps not the challenge you should be tackling at that moment. So is that what you're saying?
Yes. Rick? And so he was asked about this, and he said, you know, it's, you know, you've got this all wrong because, you know, this is sort of a group thing and everyone was there. It was like, we were all working on this together. Well, I hope they finished it. Yay. You know, that's the first thing. The second thing is, I don't know. I mean, I try that excuse all the time. You know, my wife, busy with the kids, doing this, doing that. And if I'm playing Civilization on the computer, you know, I just need to clear my mind.
Right,
my brain needs this.
I'll be better at taking care of the kids later.
This may or may not be true, but it doesn't fly. So
no, it's not a great look. This is one of those things where it's a genius move if you win. It's like, jigsaw puzzles is how you win now.
That's when it became the eureka moment.
But it doesn't work.
Right, the light bulb went off.
It doesn't work if you don't win. Okay, so there's about 1,000 things to say about
there is.
the DeSantis campaign and where things went awry. We should play just a bit of DeSantis himself making this announcement, which was released via his campaign, went haywire all over Twitter/X.
But I can't ask our supporters to volunteer their time and donate their resources if we don't have a clear path to victory. Accordingly, I am today suspending my campaign. I'm proud to have delivered on 100% of my promises, and I will not stop now. It's clear to me that a majority of Republican primary voters want to give Donald Trump another chance. They watch his presidency get stymied by relentless resistance, and they see Democrats using lawfare this day to attack him. Well, I've had disagreements with Donald Trump, such as on the coronavirus pandemic and his elevation of Anthony Fauci. Trump is superior to the current incumbent, Joe Biden. That is clear. I signed a pledge to support the Republican nominee, and I will honor that pledge. He has my endorsement because we can't go back to the old Republican guard of yesteryear, a repackaged form of warmed-over corporatism that Nikki Haley represents. The days of putting Americans last, of kowtowing to large corporations, of caving to woke ideology are over. I thank all of our passionate supporters who have stood by us through it all.
He really has it in for Nikki, doesn't he?
So I don't want to get to the endorsement part yet.
Yes.
Let's get to the
it was in the
first.
It was in the concession. It was the campaign termination and endorsement in one big package. Yeah.
So first let's do the DeSantis sort of postmortem. His announcement had a couple of features that illustrate, I think, sometimes why this didn't work on the ground. He started out with a very sober but pretty dry outlining of his vision for a constitutional America. And it's all this policy speak that actually I enjoy very much because I believe that he believes it and I believe in it. Yeah. And I think it led him to the many good decisions he made during COVID while other people, including Trump, were making very bad decisions. But it doesn't feel entertaining like Trump, which is that's a large part of why people are drawn to him. So I think there's some of that.
And you had to tune in the hard way. And there are a lot of old people out there. I may one day soon, very, very soon, include myself in this. Where is he? How come what TV station is he on and he's not? You had to get online and people were getting kicked off and, because there was too many people trying to watch. I mean, so
that was the infamous campaign kickoff.
Threads? Was it Threads?
No, it was on Twitter,
X.
but Spaces.
Spaces. That's what I meant. Spaces. Sorry.
Now, so this is the sentence from a Politico piece that I think is a bit unfair to the campaign, but nonetheless sort of channels this concern. The campaign introduced him to the nation as a bright but socially awkward introvert, a nerd who did not enjoy people, which was a problem since voters tend to be people. Look, here's my concern about this in general. Beyond DeSantis. DeSantis, who I like because he is good at governing. That doesn't mean I agree with him all the time, but I like people who are good at governing. He understands how the power structure in Florida works. He understands the levers of power that he has at his disposal. You may disagree with how he uses them, but I think he has some sort of respect and idea for what the limitations are. Yeah. Unlike a Donald Trump. But the skills that make you good at governing are not necessarily and often aren't packaged with skills that make you good at campaigning.
No, and it's unfortunate because likewise, he's wooden, right? He has a relatability problem.
And I will say better in smaller groups. That's a thing you saw on the campaign trail. Sometimes it's a thing I've seen personally.
There's something weird about the delivery when he's doing this public speaking in front of large audiences. It's unfair, but as you mentioned, that's just the way it is. You have to be good at that. Barack Obama was good at that. Ronald Reagan was good about that, being able to charm people and being able to put forth the kind of policies that we agree on. All I wanted was somebody who could competently govern, which he showed in Florida, obviously, and somebody who can push through conservative policies. There we are. Basically an adult in the room. And apparently that was too much to ask for. Sorry. I asked for too much.
The electorate in the early primary states does not look like it's looking for other options than Donald Trump. We hoped that they would shop around.
No.
But perhaps not. They do have a chance, and we'll know tomorrow. You'll know now.
Do you think he was hurt by not responding sooner to the Trump attacks. Do you remember? I admire, take the high road. I'm not going to address these petty like name calling, but the name calling worked.
I think there's a couple things. Let's deal with the structural problem, which is that so much of the campaign was outsourced to the super PAC with which you are not allowed to communicate. Yeah. And if the person running the super PAC is not your former bestie who is psychically linked to you in a way that makes him able to anticipate your every move, him or her, able to anticipate your every move and run strategy just as you would please without talking to you, that becomes a problem. A lot of stuff was outsourced to the super PAC. I think this was a bit of an experiment in campaigns. I think part of the reason they did that perhaps was because DeSantis did want to wait until after his legislative session was done in order to get his work governing done and then move on to doing this. And so he wasn't going to be as personally involved in that. So he handed it off. In the end, that did not work out. So that's one thing. Jeff Rowe, by the way, is the one who ran Never Back Down. And Trump, in his vindictive way, has said nobody can hire Jeff Rowe anymore, who's a long time high power consultant. Who, he has the attention span of a gnat, so who knows how long he'll stick to that. But I think also you have the Goldilocks problem here, which is that how do you attack Trump? Right? You can be Chris Christie. You can be too hot, right? Or I guess too cold for the too cold to Trump for the Trump voters and soft Trump voters to come to you. You're just making a point. You're not going to win them over. You can be too warm. Vivek Ramaswamy, right? Who's just too close to Trump, and there's absolutely no reason that you would vote for Vivek over Trump because he's saying Trump was the greatest president ever. So why would you do that? And then there's DeSantis, who tried the just right approach, right? He tried to go after him on some things, but not on others, and sort of stick up for him when he felt lawfare was unfairly going after him, which I understand the impulse because I do it too, even though I am not a huge Donald Trump fan, if you're trying to be honest with people. But the just right path didn't work either. And the just right path especially didn't work after Trump started being indicted. First, it should be noted, with the most ridiculous of the indictments, which is the Alvin Bragg indictment.
The hush money.
So that had a galvanizing impact. Now there's another problem, which is the timing. The time at which Ron DeSantis was a clear frontrunner over Donald Trump was January of 2023. I was
going to say
So if he had started a different campaign in January 2023, do we think that it also would not have been kneecapped in March by the Bragg, the start of the cascade of indictments? And then last, I think, if it were me, I would have run a campaign that defined Donald Trump as the Fauci president. And just hoped that the Republican voter who cared immensely about pushing back on COVID restrictions at the time.
Well, the memory's still fresh.
Would have reacted to that. I'm not sure they would. I know that I'm different than the average voter in that I want accountability for that. But I think if you
We're still demanding the reckoning.
If you'd gone hard on that, and that had been like just run GIFs in ad form of him putting the medal on Fauci's head. Like just that's it. That's the whole thing. And that's oversimplifying it. I'm not a high power consultant myself, but that would, to me, that's the killer differentiation between the two. And if you don't go hard on that one, it doesn't pan out.
And instead you had...
Might not have panned out anyway.
Instead you have Trump caricaturing DeSantis and even trying to tie him to bad COVID policy, which was insane.
So ludicrous.
But I mean, the Trump tactic is, just throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. I mean, a lot of people like to do this as a thing. And then if it doesn't, okay, move on to the next accusation, hurl the next insult. The thing about Trump, of course, is this is all a game for him, right? And he likes to win. And so while it is a game, he will do everything it takes to win. And he's going to, call you all sorts of nicknames and make fun of you for wearing lifts and DeSanctimonious. It's like telling Ted Cruz that his father shot JFK,
right.
And then all of a sudden there's
Let's put it behind us.
Right. And there's now Ted Cruz endorsing Donald Trump. I mean, it's really quite amazing, these turnarounds. And I think you wanted to talk about the endorsement.
Well, I do. Perhaps. But first, can I say what makes me the most concerned?
Yeah.
And sad, frankly, about DeSantis not being able to challenge Trump. It is this, because it's not a secret that I like DeSantis and largely like his governance of the state of Florida and think he would make a good president. However, I was skeptical of the ability to campaign in this way. And here we have it panning out in that way, or not panning out in that way. What concerns me is this, is that we have, if the people of America, of the major parties, as it looks like they will, choose a Biden-Trump rematch.
Yeah.
What they have chosen is two major party apparati. Is that how you do that, plural?
Yeah.
Apparati.
Us becomes E, yes.
Who have no interest in any COVID accountability ever. And I know that I'm different from a regular voter.
Right. They've both had a hand.
Well, this is the thing. Trump was complicit in a lot of stuff that happened in 2020. Now, you can say, we didn't know. It was a novel threat. Understood. Right. A lot of people did know, though. And a lot of people made different decisions. Yeah. And I will always be thankful for the DeSantises and the Kemps and the Kim Reynolds and the Kristi Noems of the world who did buck. Kemp of Georgia, who did buck, yes, the Trump White House and say, we're going to do things differently. Yeah. The Trump administration decision to shut down the greatest economy in the history of the world was one of the most disastrous public policy calls in the history of this country. Right. Now, he doesn't get blamed for that.
No.
This is why I would have tried to blame him for it. That would have been my thing. But he doesn't get blamed for it. He skates on it. He doesn't want to go down this road. I don't think he has the energy for it or the inclination or the discipline to be interested in rooting out the deep state of the NIH and all these.
Do you remember how Mitt Romney had difficulty going after Barack Obama over the healthcare for all, right?
Yes.
Obamacare, because he had his own sort of version of that in Massachusetts, and it sort of hampered him in that argument.
Yes.
Do you think as a result, it seems to be you're suggesting that then Trump is not really going to go after Biden on the whole Fauci thing because he's connected to it as well?
Yeah,
both.
Yeah. They're what's the meme with the arm wrestling arms?
That's from that's from Schwarzenegger and Schwarzenegger and Carl Weathers and Predator.
Yes.
Commando. It was Commando, actually.
So that is that's the meme. They are the meme on Predator, covering up COVID transgressions. Yeah. Democrats, of course, have no interest in looking into this for the most part, because not only were they complicit in it, but they kind of liked it. They thought it was awesome that they had all this power to do all these amazing things and just tell everyone what to do for safety and such. All of this makes it more dangerous that this could happen in the future. And in case you're wondering how interested Trump is, let me play this clip of him this week.
I think we did a fantastic job on COVID. Nobody knew. I've been given tremendous credit for the economy, for the military, for foreign policy. The one thing I've never been given credit for was the job we did on COVID. We did a fantastic job with all of the medicines and all. If you look at Regeneron, all of the things that we did a fantastic job. Have never been given the credit for that. And basically, I allowed the governors to do their states. And people like Henry McMaster, who was here yesterday, who, by the way, endorsed me. He's the governor of South Carolina. Almost every politician in South Carolina endorsed me, which is a little bit tough for Nikki.
Fantastic job.
What was
notes?
What was his line about Regeneron? That was very interesting because that's a very big and successful pharmaceutical company, but they did not. Pfizer and Moderna had the vaxes, so
he might have just forgotten.
It's a nice shout out. I for the record, I own some stock in Regeneron, so I was kind of curious about that.
No, but fantastic job. He has no notes on anything that went down in 2020. And here's the thing: look, he does deserve credit for pushing back in some ways. Mm-hmm. He suggested that schools should open, and the teachers unions and the pediatric associations and all these idiots who were too too obsequious to their own ideological leanings, rejected that correct advice, and sometimes bullying in the way that he was putting it, because it was from him. Right. Now.
Oh, this is just the same thing as Kamala Harris saying that she wouldn't take the Trump vax.
Yeah. But here's the difference, though. And this is why I like governance. The same thing happened to DeSantis.
Yeah. Death Sandus.
People were aligned against him.
Oh, my goodness.
The Florida teachers unions sued him to stop him from opening schools. And he was like, no, we will fight you and we'll beat you. So that's the difference, right? So
opening the beaches. How dare you open the beaches?
And I think that's what you lose in this transaction. You lose someone who's interested in going after those people.
Right.
Nikki Haley might be somewhat more interested than Trump is. DeSantis certainly the one who was most interested in doing that. And if you end up with a Trump, you lose someone who has the ability to discern the correct call on something like this in the future. And
well, Florida
fantastic job.
Florida should be happy to have him as their governor.
Indeed. Meanwhile, Nikki Haley, she's talking about what you lose in the transaction.
Yeah.
When it comes to being nigh on 80 years old. Here's what she had to say in New Hampshire the other day, getting a little tougher on old Donald Trump.
We all saw what happened at the rally last night. That wasn't the first time. Go back and look. Here you've got a situation. I'm not saying he is in any way like Joe Biden, but Joe Biden is not what he was 2 years ago. We need a president for 8 years, even if you have a president for 4 years. The man was going on a rant about how I was keeping Capitol Police from going in on January 6th. He went on and on, mentioned my name multiple times, about the fact that I stopped people from being secure on January 6th. I wasn't in D.C. on January 6th. I had nothing to do with the Capitol. It's things like that. He said multiple times that he ran against President Obama. He didn't run against President Obama. These things happen because guess what? When you're 80, that's what happens. You're just not as sharp as you used to be. This is not personal. Y'all know I voted for him twice. I was proud to serve in his administration. This is the fact that we have a country in disarray and a world on fire, and we need to know that we are not giving our kids options of two 80-year-olds going into a presidency. We need to know that the person that's going to be in this office has the stamina to be at the top of their game when it comes to national security, the top of their game when it comes to the future of our economy and what we're going to do for our kids. And so those are the concerns that we continue to bring about.
She ain't wrong, though.
No, and yet somehow that's what's going to happen, isn't it? We're going to have that. Well, she's rounding up Trump's age, isn't she? He's not quite.
He's not quite there.
He's not quite, but you round it up to the closest. Yeah.
Just like you rounded up at like CVS to donate to the.
Well, yes.
Sure, round it up.
Yes, I do that too.
By the way, I do want to just place an alert out there for you guys in case anyone's not worried about the government response to a threatened pandemic in the future. The World Health Organization has formulated a pandemic treaty that they're pitching to everyone that would just agree to just do what the World Health Organization says should this happen again, and sort of, undercut sovereignty for all free nations. So just look out for that.
Yeah. In association with the World Economic Forum, I'm sure.
Yeah. Everything will be fine. Whoever's friends with Donald Trump, should he get the nomination, let's just put that bug in his ear about this. And hey, not listen to these guys. Okay?
Especially with who they have, Dr. Ted.
He's gonna bring Fauci out of retirement for one last pandemic.
You can't question him. But I feel like that's what happened under Trump was, of course.
Do you have it in you, Anthony, to come and help me?
Yes.
In the nation's time of need.
And
I'm retired. I'm too old for this.
And the last time, that was a good Fauci, by the way. The last time Fauci was in the Trump administration, of course, you were bullied into just basically the media was like, how dare you question the temerity to even question Dr. Anthony Fauci and what he has to say. Did you have thoughts on the endorsement, by the way?
Oh, yes. Sorry. We lost track of that. No, look, I think that was
a quick turnaround.
Yeah. Look, I think that endorsement sounded a bit perfunctory, as you might expect. It's interesting, though, because I think him dropping out pre-New Hampshire likely benefited Trump versus Haley. Now, I'm a person.
Why would he do that?
So I'm a person who would likely be, if I were in one of these early states, probably a DeSantis voter with a second choice Nikki. Right?
Yeah.
A lot of people are Trump voters with a second choice DeSantis. He did accomplish that. He became that second choice. Most DeSantis voters are second choice Trump, probably, or more comfortable in that camp, right?
I guess. Yeah.
So I think maybe that helped him.
Right.
And you saw a little bit of that in polling, which we shouldn't get to because it's already done.
Yes, of course. I mean, what's the point? But but again, the thing with Trump, of course, is that once you bend the knee, you are a worthy contender.
Right.
Everything we said, that's just the way the game is played. But again,
all's fair in love and war.
Yeah. But now, of course, now that,
he did say he will retire the name DeSanctimonious.
Did he say that for real?
He did. We'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I fully believe that one.
I'm glad that he conceded that they've had disagreements, but the stuff he said about Trump in the past was pretty harsh.
The stuff Trump has said about him
was pretty
harsh.
It's
insanely harsh, right?
And then I think about, this is that turnaround is so.
This is the problem with the whole party, right? Is that this guy has is it imprimatur or imprimatur?
Imprimatur, yeah.
Imprimatur of such a large part of the voting base that to stick with your principles and say, this guy's not fit for office, hurts you with voters to such a degree that many people are not willing to just say like, nah, I'm not there for it. Right. To me, perhaps the most disappointing part of the primary process was when they were all asked if they would vote for him if he was convicted of a felony, and they all except Christie raised their hands. I was like, you wouldn't want to leave that open for a game time decision.
No.
Because I feel like I'm not sure. Like, which felony?
Yeah, no, it would.
I'd like to know. It
would be like, is it Mayor Curley, or is it was it in Rhode Island, for that matter, where the politician who's in jail and still is elected into office? Maybe that was Mayor Curley.
By the way, I also want to commend on a little bit on this front, a piece in Politico called "Our System Needs to Be Broken, and He is the Man to Do It." It's a sort of an in-depth piece about one specific New Hampshire voter by Michael Cruz. His name's Ted Johnson, and he was an Obama, Trump voter. And he's been, he and his brother have a rift because his brother's anti-Trump and he's pro-Trump. But there was a moment in the fall when he was pro-Nikki Haley in New Hampshire. And he thought, well, maybe we do just really need to come together. Right. And she's somebody who's more positioned to do that. And then he got madder and madder about the Biden administration's
and the attacks and the weaponization.
The Biden administration's weaponization to some degree, the indictments, the Biden administration's total incompetence, the idea that them being out to get Trump means they're out to get people like him.
Yeah.
And
the utter disdain, by the way, of people like this voter. It's like, well, you're too stupid anyway. We're just going to do it.
Right. Yeah, you're right. So a lot of the piece, by the way, the piece in classic media style, it actually is listening to this guy. And I appreciate that. Yeah. And it gives a full hearing to his concerns. It also puts Russiagate in quotes as if he is conspiracy mongering about Russiagate. And it's like, no, you guys are the conspiracy theorists. He's correct about being distrustful of you and others who pushed it.
Right. So, Instead, it's the opinion that these crazy wingers have conspiracy theory about the conspiracy theory.
Now, also interesting, the ads in New Hampshire about Nikki Haley being corporatist or being sort of the old guard GOP seem to have landed with him, and he has changed his mind back to being a Trump supporter. But here's the part where, like you said, some of these pieces are like dripping with too much condescension. Here's his take on the indictments. This voter, the federal election interference case in Washington, I don't see it, he said. There was no insurrection. The porn star hush money case in New York, totally ridiculous. The sweeping election interference case in Georgia, jury's out on what's going on there. And the Mar-a-Lago classified documents case in Florida, it's the one that gives Johnson a modicum of pause. You don't F around with classified material. Whoever advised him he could have that, he should have gave that up, he said. But he was being the stubborn, arrogant person that he is. And he added, I didn't like the way the FBI did it. The raid was ridiculous, and that just emboldened me. Okay, that succinct sort of legal take on all those charges is pretty damn good and accurate.
In a nutshell.
So you can't come at this guy and say you're perceiving things incorrectly, because in fact he knows that Russiagate was a fraud and he's perceiving this actually pretty
a lot of these charges are bogus. Where
I disagree with where he comes down.
Sure, but the real estate assessment charges, where he's already been found guilty, right?
But it struck me as interesting that
there's no victim in that crime.
To me, that's a better assessment of a lot of these legal troubles.
Yeah.
Than most
what you're hearing
people
out there.
You will see on TV give
That's right. Now, and to be fair, I was going to say, with DeSantis' turnaround, that's not new in politics. I think about Kamala Harris, who went after Joe Biden really, really hard. And then now it's the vice president, She was basically like, he bust me across the nation to go to, she's like. That little girl was me. So she said the little girl was me.
The little girl was me.
Okay.
No, she called him a straight up racist. Yeah, all the things. So these things certainly happen. Do you think that either Nikki Haley or DeSantis is looking for or would take cabinet appointments or VP slots? DeSantis has firmly said no VP for him. That's what he said. Nikki Haley, I don't think, has ruled that out entirely. What's your gut on that?
In DeSantis's campaign termination speech, he basically lays out a rationale for going back to Trump at the end of the day, because the choice is either between Trump or Biden. We can't have 4
He's binary
years.
choicing us. Yeah.
Yes, and it's 4 years of this past disaster. America's enemies on the. Everything is falling apart. So we have to go with that option. And because of that, you could rationalize.
It's not a binary choice.
No, at
the moment,
I always got a kick out of people who are saying that if you were going to pick somebody else, well, that's just a vote for, Hillary, they would say.
Yeah.
Well, suppose I was going to vote for Hillary. Now I'm not going to vote. Does that still mean it's a vote for Hillary?
Right.
You know what I mean?
True.
As opposed to people telling you it was a vote for Trump. It's everyone's projecting. But the rationale is, well, like General Mattis did as Secretary of Defense, you need to have an adult in the room.
Mm-hmm.
This guy is the president of the United States. He's a little bit unstable, but maybe that's why we need to be there to counterbalance that instability. Except for I don't know who's left, because all those people left. And I you think about if it's like 2 or 3 people they left, okay, I'll leave. They got access to grind. They got book contracts, whatever. But these are a lot of people who have now, burned bridges, or that Trump has, blown up the bridge himself, right? I mean, they've had these bad breaks. Either way, no matter how you cut it, whether it be Kelly or Bill Barr.
He turns on every single hire he's ever made.
Yeah, every single hire, White House press secretaries or whoever. The thing is, you begin to think of Trump after a while as, and I mentioned this before, the analogy to the guy in college or the girl in college who you have a conversation, and you find you find out that they're not living in an apartment or a dorm with housemates. They live alone. They live alone in a single, and they're like, oh, well, my freshman year roommate, he was insane. My sophomore year roommate, also crazy. Then I lived in this house, and all those housemates were awful and terrible. And you're like, wait a minute, are they all bad? They all bad?
What's the common thread here? Yeah.
So that's how I think about it with Trump. But I think, I don't know who he's going to have in the cabinet.
I think the problem with this stuff is that you come into a Trump administration an adult in the room, and you leave very possibly diminished and with an insurmountable legal bill. Right.
Unless you're Sean Spicer, then you'll come back.
It's a tough ask.
They left on good terms.
Actually, I think
Dr.
that
Gorka.
Nikki Haley is one of the few people who left without her personal brand suffering.
Yeah, having been his ambassador to the United Nations.
But almost because she exited cleanly, MAGA has never accepted her as one of the team. Quite obviously, right?
Weirdly.
Anyway, she has to perform extremely well here and then in her home state, right? And I think the order is tall in South Carolina.
Yeah.
But she is a compelling option, and I think she has at least a bit of staying power.
Right. That's what she said. And, you're not, she's not going anywhere. South Carolina is going to be her last stand, I think. But obviously, New Hampshire, by the time you know about this, things are difficult.
It's tricky. I mean, this is the thing. I don't know if I said this last podcast, but what I learned from Iowa is, I think the open question was, is the GOP electorate going to treat Trump as an incumbent president or treat this thing as a true contested primary?
Right.
And the answer in Iowa was like,
yeah,
sure, he's not the strongest incumbent president, but we're going to basically treat him like one. And so, you know, he would be an incumbent president if he had like won in 2020. Then he couldn't run again. So here we are.
Here we are.
Anyway, he lost. That's what I mean. He lost, guys.
Anyway, you're listening to this now, and I know you're wondering, how did Asa Hutchinson pull this off? How did he do that?
Oh man! All right, we have some sad news.
Yes.
That I want to note, partly because it's not getting a lot of attention.
No.
2 Navy SEALs lost their lives in a brush or an operation against a Houthi vessel. They were trying to board it from a SEAL's sort of combat vessel. I don't know the technical term, but from one to the other. 2 guys went into the water. One first. It was nighttime. They're wearing a lot of gear. One guy goes in first. The second guy goes in to save him. There was a search for quite some time because those waters are warm and they have a lot of rescue gear on them. And they're, of course, SEALs. So they're quite proficient in the water. But it has been called off and they are presumed dead. Their names are Chris Chambers and Nathan Ingram. Chambers was a Maryland native who moved to Massachusetts and swam for UMass. He also swam for University of Maryland. He did both. And the Ingram was from North Texas. And there is a tendency, because the press isn't interested in calling attention to the Iranian-backed Houthi attacks on American targets, American forces, shipping lines, or Iranian-backed attacks from any number of terrorists. I don't think we're going to hear a ton about this. And I would like to suggest, if anyone in the White House is listening, that perhaps you could put these 2 brave men's names in the State of the Union address. I know that Biden is not in the habit of doing that, as 13 Marines died during the pullout from Afghanistan. And
single mention.
They went unmentioned at the State of the Union address. But perhaps these guys, you could sneak into the speech. Just a thought. It's very sad. This is the cost of the instability in that region. This is the cost of, frankly, President Biden being obsequious to Iran, unwilling to sort of face up to what the Houthis are. Up until last week, they decided, oh yeah, they are terrorists. Sorry. This is on his plate. Right. It's not all his fault, but this is on his plate. And this is the cost of it. And now it's hitting actual American service people and their families.
That's right. It's like, we don't want to, we hate to escalate things and turn this into a war. Guess what? They're killing us, or, our men are dying, in the fight against these terrorists that we're trying to pretend is not happening. Yeah. And as always, this has always been the case for a very long time now, where you hope and pray that their sacrifice is not in vain. But you think about in the past, and how many times has it been like this, right? It's countless times that they sacrifice themselves for, a mission where perhaps it's unclear. You think about Mogadishu, right? 18 U.S. Rangers were killed trying to get Muhammad ID'd. Yeah. And then they ended up, I think the Clinton administration, in fact, ended up making a deal later on, right? They called it a truce. But, and then, by the way, there was an interesting, years ago, and it might have been on Firing Line, where one of the parents, a father of one of the Rangers who was killed, was interviewed. And he talked about Clinton meeting with the families after the whole Mogadishu Black Hawk Down incident. Right. And the father said that he asked President Clinton, if you knew that you were eventually going to make some sort of a deal with the Somalis, why did you have to send my son in this whole thing? And according to the father, he said that Clinton said, well, that's a good question. I asked Tony Lake the same thing, and just sort of passed that buck over to his national security advisor. No parent deserves that. I'm sure the conversation with Biden and the parents of these guys will be just as productive. Yeah. To give the president his due, his actual statement is, these SEALs represented the very best of our country, pledging their lives to protect their fellow Americans. Our hearts go out to the family members, loved ones, friends, and shipmates who are grieving for these 2 brave Americans. Can we just win, please? That's also too hard to ask for in this particularly when the strategy is just tit for tat right now. It's concerning. So. And again, this is like the strategy for many in
who are Democrats and media is that they want to fight Trump, right? That's the guy they want on the opposite side of the ticket because chaos agent, and they can, he turns off independent voters and suburban mom voters, and a lot of that is true, but you're going to have trouble running as that guy's a chaos agent when people look at the border, when people look at the Houthi Iranian-backed terrorist network all over the world situation and how you're sort of like deferring to Iran on it. The economy, you're going to have trouble mounting that argument. Yeah. It's given all of this. So best to those families and prayers for them, because it's been a rough, 25 years for the military community.
Yeah, it has.
I think Dan Crenshaw actually wrote about it on Instagram.
Oh, good.
And noted, I wish more Americans understood the dangerous world we live in. I wish more understood how fragile the system is that gives you all of life's comforts and freedoms. By the way, on that point, when people complain about us delving into hostilities in faraway seas, do y'all have any idea, economic dum-dums, where your goods and services come from? If they can't get through the seas,
then they got to go.
If international shipping is a problem, you're not going to have the things you get from Amazon.
The Vasco da Gama route around.
Chaos
Africa
spreads easily and quickly, as history shows over and over again. Leaving evil alone doesn't make it go away. Thank God there are brave men and willing to raise their right hand and take on these dangers and protect our way of life. I often hear people complain that we are at war in one way or another, whether it was Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine, or maritime operations like this one. But let's be clear, there has never been a we. The vast majority of Americans have been completely insulated from any of the costs of war. There is a small number of us, and some, like those two men, make the ultimate sacrifice. Their families make an even greater sacrifice than you can imagine. Pray with them today. Never forget. A lot of military community feels that way. Yeah. And it doesn't help when they're not mentioned in the State of the Union address when we lose folks. So just like, make a note. Make a note. All right. I'm not bitter about that one at all.
You wanted to talk about Canada's Milei, and here's what I enjoyed about receiving the discussion for the topics for today, where Canada's Milei. I typed in Canada's Milei, couldn't find anything. I did because you didn't mention the name, so I was like,
"Well, that's because it's hard to spell."
Canada's Milei. What?
It's hard to spell.
Oh, it's hard to spell. Oh, okay. Well,
he's Frenchy.
Oh, well, but I want to hear all about it, Mary Catherine.
His name's Pierre Poilievre, I think is how he says it. It's hard to say because, in different parts of Canada, they speak French, but sometimes the French things are not pronounced exactly the same.
It's not the same French.
Right.
Jacques Pepin, right?
Anyway.
Jacques Pepin, the French chef, when he came over to America for the first time, this is like in the 1950s, or 60s, 50s, he arrived first in Quebec. And he said it was
like,
great. Yeah. And he said the Quebecois cab driver was speaking to him in French, but he said it was like speaking to somebody from medieval times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
See, because I would read this.
Because it's like the language separation over time.
I would read this Pierre Poilievre, but
I'm sure that's how it's spelled.
But
it's pronounced.
I believe he says in the video we're going to play for you, Pierre Poilievre.
Oh, just okay.
So he'll settle it for us, okay? But the point is, this conservative in Canada who has a libertarian streak, but is appealing to sort of the populist revolt in Canada against things like, the Canadian government seizing bank accounts of truckers who crossed them about policy. Just the other day, a policeman was caught on tape manhandling an independent reporter trying to ask Trudeau a question and then arresting that person for assault.
Wow.
On the police officer. Like it was very clear on tape. Canada, concerning at times. I know they're very concerned about us as well. I'm concerned about them.
Yeah.
But this guy is sort of the anti-Trudeau. He's a young guy. He's in his 40s. He has a way with words, and he had a very popular viral video in October that I actually meant to talk about, but we didn't get to.
Okay.
Where he is, many of you have probably seen it. It's worth watching. It's like 10 minutes long at least, where he's being interviewed by a reporter about his brash conservatism and his Trump-like speaking and policies. And he just destroys the guy. And he destroys the guy while munching on an apple. Like they're in an apple orchard And I just want to play, it's like a 2-minute clip of him dismantling this guy. So you get an idea of why people like him.
Yeah.
You're obviously taking the populist pathway.
What does that mean?
Well, appealing to people's more emotional levels, I would guess. I mean, certainly you tap very strong ideological language quite frequently.
Like what?
Left wing, this and that, right wing. I mean, it's that type of ideological thing.
I never really talk about left or right.
Anyways, I don't
really believe in that.
Okay, a lot of people would say that you're simply taking a page out of the Donald Trump book.
Like which people would say that?
Well, I'm sure a great many Canadians, but
like who?
I don't know who, but
you're the one who asked the question, so you must know somebody.
Okay, I'm sure there's some out there, but anyways, the point of this question is, I mean, why should Canadians trust you with their vote, given not just the sort of ideological inclination in terms of taking the page out of Donald Trump's book, but
what are you
also
talking about? What page? Can you give me a page? Give me the page. You keep saying
in terms of turning things quite dramatically in terms of Trudeau and the left wing and all of this. I mean, you make quite a it's quite a play that you make on it. So I'm
not sure. I don't know what your question is.
Then forget that. Why should Canadians trust you with their vote?
Common sense. Okay. Common sense for a change. We're going to make common sense common in this country. We don't have any common sense in the current government. The guy prints $600 billion, grows our money supply by 32% in 3 years. That's growing the money 8 times faster than the economy. No wonder we have the worst inflation in 4 decades. I'm going to cap spending, cut waste, so that we can balance the budget and bring down inflation and interest rates. You'll want to be able to pay your mortgage again?
I'm mortified because you've been in the position of being a reporter and asking questions. And this is the reporter nightmare, that you don't have your S together and all of a sudden it's being broken apart while you're on the spot.
Live on air.
And what do you say next? Because you've just been exposed for a fraud. Well, good for him. This is great. That was great.
So I'll read a bit from a Politico. Now, in Canada, there could be an election, this year or 2025. Like it's unpredictable, but has been the head of the Conservative Party, has gathered a lot of sort of attention, momentum. It's just nice to hear a different voice. And I think in the case of this guy and Milei, they're showing that populism can actually have sound economic, ideological sort of real principles that you can bring to people and still be appealing to the regular guy out there.
I appreciate the plain spokenness, very direct. Just explain it to me as the average voter.
One of his other ideas at the very beginning of this interview, which again, just like sensible, is, hey, we don't have a lot of doctors. The wait times in these hospitals are terrible because of socialized healthcare. Right. And he says, well, I have a plan to fast track with a specific test a bunch of our immigrant doctors who have turned to low wage work or owning other businesses because we don't allow them to be doctors because they're from other countries and they're certified there. So I would like to fast track that.
Well, good.
And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. So interesting dude. Just keep an eye on it. Like I said, that viral video has been stuck in my mind for months because it's so enjoyable. And now that we have Milei in the Southern Hemisphere, and now we have Pierre to the north, perhaps we could get somebody in the middle who, no, are we gonna not?
No,
we're gonna pass.
No,
we're gonna pass on that. Okay.
Again, asking too much, Mary Catherine. We're asking too much.
Anyway, go Pierre.
Speaking of Canada, listener Ian Brody says I should have referred to your ski cap on the last show as a toque. Apparently, that's what they call it up there in the Great White North.
Look, I
thought that was like a chef's toque, but they say a toque.
No, they do say toque.
So to our friends in Canada, Mary Catherine was rocking the toque.
This is a bone of much regional contention.
Is that right?
Yes, because what do you call it?
Ski cap.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the South, we call it a toboggan.
Wow, never heard that one.
Which makes no sense because I think
shaking her head.
That's a sled, right?
Yeah.
No, a knit cap that you wear on your head in winter is called a toboggan.
That's the closest they get to the winter in the South. That's why they call it that. They're just projecting. They wish they had a toboggan, so they put one on their head.
No, somebody one time heard toboggan in a winter context and was like, how about we just call the hat that? Like, give it a name.
I have to say, though, my wife, Kate, was saying she's so impressed by your ability to keep up with the current lingo when you made references to the game day fit. And she's like, is that like the outfit? Is that the outfit that you wear on the game day? Like how you look? And I said, I think so. I'm not sure.
Yep. By the way, I have another video up of me dressed in a game day fit, and you'll have to go check that out at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. And I wore that fit, by the way, programming note, because the deal is, like I said, if I'm going to wear the embarrassing outfit to drop my children off at school, I also have to have some skin in the game. So I wear it to some professional engagement later that day.
Okay.
And so I wore that outfit that you guys will see. It was a Travis Kelce outfit to Meghan McCain's podcast called Meghan McCain Has Entered the Chat. So you can listen to Guy Benson and me there. And you can check out that fit. I also learned some new slang this week.
What'd you learn?
FIWB.
FIWB, which is?
It we ball.
Oh, you could bleep that one. Okay. That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you could subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You could follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis. I'm at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube and Instagram, and you should, so you can see my fits. F it, we ball. Thank you for being with us. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.